Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of sources and extract the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. When most people think of Brazil, their minds often jump straight to Rio, maybe Sao Paulo, the big names.
Like the beaches, the Christ statue, the carnival.
Exactly. But focusing only there, you're missing, well, an enormous part of the picture. It's this incredibly vast, vibrant tapestry of cultures, histories, natural wonders that stretches way beyond just those famous cities.
Absolutely. The regional diversity is just immense.
So today we're diving into three specific Brazilian states that maybe fly a bit under the radar: Goiás, Paraná, and Rondônia.
Good choices. Very distinct regions.
Our mission here is to kind of give you a shortcut to understanding the really profound regional variations that make up Brazil. We'll pull out the key insights: culture, history, traditions, music, food, landscapes.
Just the surprising facts, yeah.
And hopefully give you a much more multifaceted view of what Brazilian identity actually means across the country.
Sounds great. Where are we starting?
Okay, let's kick off our journey right in the heartland, Goiás. People often call it the beloved land, fruit of life. And its story, it seems like a real blend. You've got indigenous roots like the Zavante, the Caraja, then the Portuguese colonization, and the whole spirit of those Mandarante explorers.
Yeah, the Bandeirantes are crucial here. What's really striking about Goiás' start is how that search for gold, quite literally, laid the foundation for its first capital.
Vila Boa, right.
Exactly. Vila Boa, which is now Goiás Valley. It became the capital back in the 18th century after gold was found nearby. Founded way back in 1682 by Anhanguera, one of those famous Bandeirantes. It's a UNESCO site now.
Still preserved then.
Oh, yeah. Beautifully. But then the state's modern growth, that really took off with the construction of Goiânia, the modern capital. That was a planned city built in 1937.
Ah, okay.
And then, of course, the building of Brasilia nearby in the 1950s gave it another huge boost. So you see this pattern, planned cities driving development.
Interesting. So beyond the gold rush and the planned cities, what really gives Goiás its spirit today?
What about the traditions, the music?
Oh, it's incredibly rich. Goiás is like a living museum for popular traditions. You absolutely have to talk about the cavahadas in Pirenópolis.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, they've been doing it since 1826. It's this amazing reenactment of medieval battles, Christian versus Moorish, all on horseback. And they have these masked figures, the mascarados, who are colorful and pretty funny.
Sounds vibrant.
It really is. And then there's the Procissão de Fogaréu, also in Pirenópolis on Holy Wednesday. Torch-bearing penitents, hooded robes reenacting Jesus' arrest. Very atmospheric.
Wow.
And the scale of some events is huge. The Festa do Divino Espírito Santo, again Pirenópolis, and the Feast of the Eternal Father in Trindade. These go on for days and literally draw millions of pilgrims.
Millions. That's incredible religious devotion.
It really is deeply ingrained.
And music-wise, I mean, Goiás is sertanejo, isn't it? Brazil's country music. Absolutely. It's the birthplace and still the beating heart of sertanejo. You find countless musicians doing both the classic modão style, often more storytelling, a bit melancholic.
Right, the older sound.
Yeah, and the modern university-style sertanejo, which is huge nationally.
But it's not just sertanejo, is it?
No, definitely not. There's also what they call música goiana, which is this really nice blend of samba, choro, African, European influences, often quite upbeat, often played by trios, maybe with a cavaquinho.
Okay.
And you've got folk forms, too, like katira, kuru, congadas. Those really show the indigenous and rural roots.
So a real mix.
And interestingly, Goiânia itself has become this hub for indie music, punk, rock. Yeah. You have big festivals like Banana and Goiânia Noise.
So you've got these centuries-old traditions, folk music, sertanejo, and indie rock festivals, all coexisting.
Exactly. And that kind of raises a key point, doesn't it? How do these deep-rooted traditions and musical genres stay so relevant? How do they shape daily life in a state that's also modernizing so fast? They seem to act as cultural anchors.
That's a really insightful way to put it. Okay, so what does this mean for, say, your taste buds? What's the food like? And what about the natural side of Goiás?
Well, food-wise, Goiás has some famous specialties. The Marmelada de Santa Luzia, it's an artisan quince paste, is actually recognized as intangible cultural heritage.
Wow, a paste.
Yeah. But beyond that, the food really reflects that country life.
Yeah.
I think hearty barbecue, river fish stews are very common. Doce de leite, pamonha, that corn-based dish.
Oh, I love pamonha.
Right. And the empadão goiano, a savory pie. And don't forget, there's a huge agricultural state, leading producer of sugarcane, soy, corn, coffee.
A real powerhouse.
Yeah.
And the landscape that supports all this.
It's dominated by the Cerrado biome, this vast sort of scrub savanna. It has really unique plants like the buriti palms you see everywhere, including parks like Bosco's Buritis in Goiânia, plus beautiful Cerrado orchids, bromeliads.
And wildlife.
Oh, yeah. Iconic parks like Chapada dos Veadeiros and Parque Nacional das Emas. They're crucial habitats. You can find jaguars, Maine wolves, giant anteaters, tapirs,
Yeah.
a lot of biodiversity.
So connecting that back, Goiás is this major food producer, but it's also sitting on this incredibly important biome, the Cerrado. That must create some tension, right? Balancing agriculture and conservation.
That's the critical challenge, absolutely. It embodies that global issue. How do you feed people and protect unique ecosystems simultaneously?
A tough balance. And you mentioned contrast earlier between the cities and the countryside.
Definitely. You have Goiás Velho, Cidade de Goiás, that UNESCO town, cobbled streets, 18th century buildings, feels like stepping back in time. Then you jump to Goiânia, totally different. Planned, modern, very green, lots of parks like Bosque dos Buritis, modernist architecture.
A real visual shift.
Huge shift. And then you've got places like Caldas Novas, which is apparently the world's largest hot springs resort.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. And socially, you're seeing this interesting mix, too. The urban Goianians, the countryside Sertanejos, but now also this growing scene of indie artists, LGBTQ creatives, adding new layers. It's evolving.
Fascinating. Okay, let's shift gears and head south now to Paraná. You described this one as a vibrant blend, a real crossroads of cultures. How did that come about?
Well, Paraná's story starts, of course, with its indigenous roots, Tupi-Guarani, Gang mainly, and Portuguese colonizers, Africans, the usual base for Brazil.
Right.
But what really defines Paraná are the massive waves of immigration, mostly in the 20th century. We're talking German, Italian, Polish, Japanese, Lebanese, Syrian immigrants.
Wow, that's diverse.
Incredibly diverse. And they didn't just, add to the population. They fundamentally changed the state. Agriculture, architecture, the festivals you see today, all heavily influenced by these groups.
So people there might identify more with their specific heritage or city?
Exactly. It's striking how strongly people identify by state or even city. Someone from Curitiba is a Curitibano, and that carries a certain weight, a certain cultural identity tied to the city's history and those immigrant roots.
Makes sense. And Paraná's history isn't just about immigration, right? There were big economic shifts and that famous urban planning.
Absolutely. I mean, indigenous groups lived there for thousands of years. First, let's not forget.
Of course.
But in the 20th century, you get these monumental projects. The Itaipu Dam, for one of the world's biggest hydroelectric plants. That was built under the Vargas government. Big national development push. It completely modernized the state's infrastructure.
A massive undertaking.
Huge. And then disaster struck in 1975. A major black frost, the Gita Negra, it absolutely wiped out the coffee crops, which were the backbone of the economy.
Wow, that must have been devastating.
It forced a total rethink. They had to diversify the economy, move into other crops, other industries. And out of this history of big projects and adaptation, you get Curitiba.
The famously well-planned city.
World-renowned, really. For its urban planning, that bus rapid transit system, the BRT, which was revolutionary at the time, plus all the eco-parks, the European-style architecture. Paraná really shows how a region can tackle huge challenges, natural or man-made, and innovate its way forward.
Incredible resilience. So, okay, beyond the economy and city planning, what about the culture, the music, the passions?
Paraná has its own distinct sounds. There's a unique caipira pagode style. It's an acoustic folk music born in the city of Moringa around 1959.
Caipira pagode, different from Rio's pagode.
Totally different. Think viola caipira, that 10-string guitar with a very specific rhythm, a syncopated strumming they call recortado. There are classics like Pagode and Brasilia that define the style.
Interesting.
And then from Curitiba, you get massive names like Chitãozinho and Yoro. They took that sort of caipira sound and blended it with pop, took it mainstream.
Ah, okay, I know them.
Right. Huge stars. And even today, you have bands like Jovem Dionisio, an indie pop group from Curitiba with that massive viral hit, Acorda Padrinho.
So traditional folk, mainstream pop, indie.
Yeah. And add to that the strong gaucho influence, especially around Ponta Grossa and Curitiba. Traditional dances, the whole churrasco ritual is very important.
Right, the barbecue culture.
And, like many places in Brazil, fierce football rivalries. Atlético Paranaense versus Coritiba is a huge deal there.
So how does all that fit together? The rural traditions, the gaucho culture, the urban indie scene?
Well, I think that blend is Paraná's identity. It's this dynamic mix of traditional rural life and that Very modern, sophisticated urban culture, especially in Curitiba. It's not one or the other. It's the interplay between them.
And you absolutely cannot talk about Paraná without mentioning
Iguazu Falls.
Iguazu Falls, exactly.
Breathtaking. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, just spectacular. And also the Araucaria forest, the Brazilian pine. Those trees are a real symbol of the state, though sadly only fragments remain.
Such an iconic tree. And food-wise, those immigrant influences must be strong.
Oh, definitely. Italian and German influences are huge. Lots of pasta, sausages, polenta features heavily, and of course, fantastic churrasco, building on that gaucho tradition.
Makes my mouth water.
And agriculturally, beyond coffee now, Paraná is a leader in things like beans, wheat, oats, plus specialty coffee and mate tea are big.
Mate tea. So that expression, batizados pelo mate, baptized by yerba mate, really fits then.
It captures that local pride perfectly, even if it's not an official motto.
Okay, final leg of our journey. Let's head northwest, deep into the Amazon biome to Rondônia. This state seems defined by the frontier spirit, shaped by forces bringing diverse people together.
Rondônia is a fascinating case. It truly is a melting pot. You have numerous indigenous tribes, Nambiquara, Gavião, Peter Sui, among others, with deep roots and traditions that are still very much alive in dance, crafts, oral songs.
So indigenous culture is still very present.
Very much so. But layered onto that, you have migrants who came from literally all over Brazil, seeking opportunity, land, a new start, plus the underlying historic Portuguese influence.
So it's a constant negotiation between the ancient heritage and waves of newcomers.
That's a great way to put it. The state's identity feels like it's always being shaped and reshaped by this dynamic between the original inhabitants and those who arrive later.
And here's where it gets really wild, right? Rondônia's actual formation, its creation as a political entity, seems completely tied to rubber.
It's incredible, isn't it? But yes, absolutely pivotal. The Madeira-Mamoré Railway.
A devil's railway?
Sometimes called that, yeah, due to the incredibly harsh conditions and high mortality during construction. It was built during the Amazon rubber boom, specifically to transport rubber from what's now Porto Velho down to Guajará-Mirim, bypassing rapids on the river.
Just for rubber?
Primarily, yes. That massive project and the huge wave of migration it sparked, workers coming from all over Brazil and even abroad, was fundamental to the region's development. It basically put the place on the map.
Wow.
And that eventually led to it becoming a federal territory in 1943. They named it after Marshal Cândido Rondon, the explorer famous for his work with indigenous communities and telegraph lines.
Ah, Rondon Bright.
And then it finally achieved statehood in 1982. So yeah, you can literally trace the state's origins back to the global demand for rubber and the railway built to move it. It laid the tracks, so to speak, for modern Rondônia.
That's an amazing story, how a global commodity boom basically creates a state. So how does that history play out in the culture today?
Well, you see strong influences from the migrants, especially those from northeastern Brazil. Traditional festivals like Festa Junina, Bumba Meu Boi, Pastorinha are widely celebrated. The quadrilha, that square dance, is super popular during Festa Junina.
So northeastern traditions are big there.
Very big. But musically, it's a mix. You have local styles that blend folk rhythms with that Amazonian indigenous storytelling like Gavião songs that literally carry oral history down through generations.
Ancient traditions meeting newer ones.
Exactly. And then something totally different emerged in Porto Velho. Noia dance.
Noia dance, what's that?
Also called Lescaré. It's this local electronic dance rhythm, kind of simple, very bass heavy. It went viral in community parties, street parties there. A real homegrown sound.
From indigenous chants to local EDM, that's quite a range.
It really is. And the food, as you expect, blends Amazonian ingredients. Lots of river fish. Cassava is a staple with the agrarian influences from the migrants. Homemade sweets using Brazil nuts are also common.
So do these diverse strands, indigenous songs, northeastern festivals, electronic music, Amazonian food, actually form a coherent identity, a Rondonian's identity?
I think they do, yeah. It reflects that melting pot frontier reality. It's not about smoothing out differences, maybe, but about how these diverse elements coexist and create something uniquely Rondonian. It speaks to the state's history of welcoming people from all over.
And the capital, Porto Velho, sits at the center of this.
Porto Velho is key. It's a vital port on the massive Madeira River. You can still feel the legacy of the railway there, see some of the historic architecture.
Leading away to the region.
Exactly. And it has cultural institutions, too, like the Teatro Estadual Palácio das Artes, which is actually the largest theater in Brazil's entire north region.
Impressive. Is there a local saying, like in Paraná?
There's the common expression they use, territorio da floresta, coração do Brasil.
Forest territory, heart of Brazil.
Yeah. It perfectly captures that identity, deeply rooted in the Amazon forest, but also playing a central role in the diverse fabric of the nation.
What an incredible journey, really, across just 3 states. Goiás, the spiritual and cultural heartland, home of Sertanejo, but with deep folk roots.
Right, balancing tradition and modernity.
Then Paraná, that vibrant mosaic shaped by immigrants, showing incredible resilience and urban innovation.
The crossroads, yeah, adapting and thriving.
And finally, Rondônia, the Amazonian frontier, its destiny literally shaped by the rubber boom, blending indigenous resilience with migrant energy.
The melting pot on the Madeira.
Taking this wider view, understanding these regional nuances, it just gives you such a richer, more complex picture of Brazil, doesn't it? Far beyond just Rio and São Paulo.
Absolutely. It shows the sheer diversity cultures, histories, ecosystems, the human ingenuity packed into one single country. It's immense.
So as you listening, think about these 3 fascinating states, Goiás, Paraná, Rondônia. What unique aspect, what surprising detail about Brazil's regional identity really stands out most to you? Which of these deep dives spark the most curiosity for maybe your next exploration of this vast country? Something to ponder.